Welcome to Rewrite Rising, the podcast where you can rewrite your health journey and rise above your past. I'm Drew, sharing Mindset Mondays to ground and guide you, thriving Thursdays to cut through the noise and bring clarity to nutrition. If you find these conversations helpful or think someone else would enjoy them too, make sure that you are subscribed. Whether you're tuning into YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else, feel free to share them along the way. All right, let's get into today's episode. We all chase healthier lives. We try to build better habits and try to lose weight, muscle, whatever it is. It's a constant goal for so many of us. The world often screams about an instant transformation or huge drastic overhauls, kind of like a quick fix mentality. But what if the real secret is from lasting change is not a big leap? What if it is something more subtle, more personal? So today I'm going to do that, and I'm going to dive into that intersection. We are going to think about what we are changing versus what is actually changing, the surprising power of habits that seem almost too small to count, and the emotional side that often gets overlooked, the landscape beneath it all. So here's the plan for this deep dive. First, we're going into the perception gap between when we believe what we've changed our eating and when we actually have. Second, the science behind tiny habits and how small, consistent actions create outsized ripple effects over time. Third, why self-forgiveness and self-compassion can be a game changer for anyone navigating the emotional way that often comes with changing eating behaviors. Now, my goal is to offer clear and engaging insights and practice takeaways that bridge what feels like a change and what really is a change, while centering the psychology of well-being. Okay, it's not just about calories in and calories out or sheer willpower. It's about perception, how our brains are wired, how our inner emotional world is being seen. Understanding how those three things interact is the key to a sustainable change. Okay, let's go with part one, the perception gap. Let me start with a study that made me kind of pause. It looked at a perceived versus actual healthy eating behavior change. You know, like those moments when you tell yourself, I'm really eating healthy now, and then wonder, am I really? Now, this research examined the exact disconnect. What they did is they accessed food choices and validated the questionnaire. And then later, they asked participants whether they felt they had changed their eating based on the diet data and the self-report. Participants were grouped into changers, attempters, not attempters, and healthy eaters. And here's the twist. It's kind of funny. People tend to perceive that they have changed only when they have made a truly comprehensive shift in their overall dietary pattern, not a minor adjustment. And the changers moved from what the study defined as a regular pattern to an optimal one. And alongside the shift, they showed that significant reductions across the 5 specific categories, like chocolate, cakes, pastries, biscuits, sausage, processed meats, and eggs. It was substantial, not a small tweak. And the other groups did not show similar systemic changes in their diet scores. There was physical evidence too. The changers group showed significant decrease in body mass index, BMI, which suggested the feeling of change in correspondence and measurable change. So what does that actually mean for us? Well, many public health messages encourage small shifts, like one vegetable or a 10-minute walk. They do mean one extra vegetable, by the way, not just eating one vegetable. Now, those are valuable, yet internal gauges that may not register a sense of transformation unless the change is broader and more visible. Now, it can be a mismatch between what works slowly and what feels like it is working. And the challenge is to align your self-perception with the measurable changes that we are making, right? Making tiny habit sticks. That's our next one. If our internal gauge often looks for comprehensive change, does that mean that the small steps are useless? No. Ooh. Repeat. No, not at all. This is where the science of tiny habits becomes powerful. Now, our brains resist drastic shifts because they are energy expensive and unfamiliar. That is why extreme diets and punishing workout plans so often end in burnout. They demand too much, too soon. Behavioral scientists like BJ Fogg put it simple terms technically. Big changes require high motivation, and motivation fluctuates. Small changes can be automatic with minimal effort and form the foundation for long-term success. So every habit you repeat carves a neural pathway. The more repetitions, the deeper the groove. The easier and more automatic the behavior becomes. Research backs this up in health context as well. A 2020 review in the health psychology found that people who focused on incremental changes, like one extra glass of water or a 5 extra minute walk, were about 3 times more likely to maintain these habits 6 months later than compared to those people who started with ambitious all or nothing type of goals. Tiny habits also create what we call the ripple effect. First, it's easy to reduce decision fatigue. Willpower, mental energy is finite. Please remember that. Automating small choices like prepping your gym bag the night before or laying out workout clothes conserves energy for bigger decisions later. The University of Melbourne study found that these are pre-commitment habits, such as meal prepping, were associated with about 45% lower reported stress. I am horrible at meal prepping, even though my best friend is fantastic at meal prepping, so I take it to her and her wife. They're freaking phenomenal at it, and personally, if I could get better at it, I would. It takes baby steps. I'm still happy I'm drinking more water. Second, it builds momentum. So a 5-minute morning stretch may seem trivial, but it can actually create an early win and fuels motivation for your next steps. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits with the 2-minute rule. Start with something so easy you cannot say no, like putting on running shoes or flossing one tooth. It lowers the barrier and builds identity. Third, they compound over time. Extra 10 minutes of walking per day burns about roughly 50 calories, and over a year, that's 18,000 calories, which is often estimated around 5 pounds of fat just from the tiniest walk. Swapping out one sugary drink for water each day saves roughly about 100 over a month. That can be close to a pound. The math adds up pretty quickly and quietly. So part 3, we're going to go into the evidence-backed micro habits that can start today. So here are some few small practices that can, with strong reasons behind them. Hydration and walking. Drink a glass of water first thing. Morning dehydration can slow metabolism by about 2 to 3%. And consistent hydration is linked to a better cognitive function, about 30% of lower risk to also kidney stones. Pretty neat. 10-minute movement snack after meals. Move for about 10 minutes, a short walk, gentle stretching. It can reduce the blood sugar spike for about 20 to 30%, which actually helps to support energy and long-term health. And if I don't know about you, but if you're one of those people that are, how do I explain it? Sensitive to energy spikes like I am, it kind of helps reduce that feeling of burnout and crash later. Mindful eating pause before the first bite. Pause for about 20 seconds, take a breath, notice the food. Even the brief mindful practice has been associated with roughly about 14% fewer overeating episodes, which is kind of actually really neat. It helps interrupt your autopilot. Gratitude before bed. I know this is kind of, some people say, guys, this is a little woo-woo, but I'm pretty successful people who practice gratitude these days, and it's changed their entire life. So why not write 3 genuine gratitudes? I mean, there are a lot of studies that found about 28% of reduction in cortisol and improved sleep quality in roughly about 75% of participants who practice this consistently. It lowers your stress, gives you better sleep, and makes healthier choices the next day. So why do big resolutions fail and how to fix the process? I mean, I don't know about you, but I have tried the New Year's resolutions and watched my New Year's resolutions kind of go. The common reasons include overambition, all or nothing thinking, poor environment design. We kind of tend to lean on willpower in an environment that actually works against us, and that's not a good approach. The better approach is what we kind of call the tiny plus environment formula. Smaller than you think as possible. It feels kind of funny to be like flossing one tooth, but that one tooth turns into 2, 3, turns into your whole mouth. No gingivitis. So it's kind of like the anchoring of the new tiny habit. So brush your teeth, floss one tooth, pour coffee, drink a glass of water, things of that nature. Design your environment to make the good choice easy and the less helpful choice harder. So put fruit on the counter and place cookies out of sight, or don't buy cookies. Delete your food delivery apps that trigger your late night orders. Make it harder. So the environment changes do matter. 2019 studies found that people who deliberately modify their environments to support their goals were 76% more likely to sustain new habits long-term. 6%. That's phenomenal. Technology can often help. They have habit tracking and gentle gamifications that can prove an adherence to around 65%. As Dr. Sarah McKay puts it, health is a decision. It is the small daily trades you make in favor for your future self. All right, part 4, the emotional landscape of eating. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I get really, really depressed, I crave some sweets. I dream about spoonful of honey, which I went through sugar detox, and I was literally dreaming about eating honey. I am plant-based, so I was like, Oreos, those are vegan, right? So many people experience the subclinical disorder eating. It's not necessarily diagnosable eating disorder, even though it can overlap. It includes excessive eating and dieting, a consistent preoccupation with food or weight, feeling out of control with eating, emotional eating, and the occasional binge eating that can actually harm the quality of life. Now, these two emotions appear again and again in research are shame and guilt, and they are not the same. Guilt is about actions. I did something I regret. It can motivate and repair change. Shame is about the self. I am bad. It is a judgment about worthy and identity. And in eating struggles, people often turn the negative feelings about choices or bodies into evidence that they are fundamentally flawed. And that interpretation is very corrosive. Shame is particularly damaging because it attacks the core of self-worth and is harder to escape. It also fuels the cycle. So the effective regulation model suggests that the behavior such as binging, purging, and extreme restriction can become a short-term coping mechanism to regulate or numb these negative emotions, especially shame. And the relief is temporary. The aftermath often creates more shame, which then drives into more coping mechanisms for the same behavior, therefore creating a shame-pride cycles. In anorexia, restriction may actually serve to defend against shame about the body. Weight loss can create fragile pride or sense of control, which can reinforce restriction. And in binging, internal shame can lead us to using food to cope. The binge then triggers the behavior of shame about losing control and then deepens the spiral. Shame is really hard to deal with. I know that there have been things that have helped me in the past deal with shame. One of them is not to say the thought out loud, because if you say the thought out loud, you're actually reinforcing it into your mind. So, for example, if you're saying, I'm a fuck up, or instead of I fucked up, I'm a fuck up, that's the difference. Don't say, I am, insert negative comment. And if you feel your mind doing that, try to reframe from it and go into a realistic of, I am a human being who is learning to change my habits. Okay. Now there are 3 antidotes that can interrupt a cycle. There's hope. I promise. 3 attitudes sourced toward the self repeatedly show promises: self-forgiveness, compassion, and acceptance. Self-forgiveness is an interpersonal process with yourself. You acknowledge the action, feel the regret, and then move towards the acceptance and benevolence. It's not excusing the harm or denying responsibility. It's releasing the burden so you can actually move forward. So in eating, that might be like forgiving a binge or an overly restrictive day and learning from it and resetting it and resetting yourself without punishing yourself. Now, self-compassion, as described by Kristen Neff, has 3 parts: kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Treat yourself like a good friend would. Remember the mistakes and suffering is universal. You observe the difficult feelings about being swept away. And then the self-compassion is a robust predecessor for mental health, which becomes a renewable internal source. Self-acceptance is the foundation. It is the decision to be at peace with being a human being, which implies imperfection, because none of us are perfect. And you can accept that you did something you regret without concluding that you are fundamentally bad. That stance is learning, making it easy to understand that it is okay to do this. So, learning possible without paralysis. Now, a study on subclinical disorders eating found like a strong negative relationship here. Higher self-forgiveness, self-compassion, and self-acceptance were associated with lower levels of disordered eating symptoms. Researchers also found like how emotions kind of meditate this relationship. So like state shame and state guilt, as well as the trait shame, partially meditated the link. In plain language, its positive self-attitudes seem to help directly, and they also help indirectly by lowering the shame and the guilt that often drive our behaviors. Now, trait guilt mattered less than shame in this context, because shame is the bigger player in this address. So this has practical implications for care. Cognitive behavioral therapy remains a gold standard and is extremely helpful, yet it does not always go deep on the self-directed negative emotions with shame. Interventions that actively cultivate self-forgiveness, self-compassion, and self-acceptance can be powerful additions. They address behavior and the emotional roots at the same time. So let's bring this all together. We recovered the perception gap on why we often do not feel change unless it's comprehensive. We explored why tiny habits still work, even when they do not feel dramatic at first, because when they automate, reduce decision fatigue, it builds momentum, and it compounds quietly. We also connected the ideas to the emotional terrain, especially shame and guilt, and we looked at the 3 antidotes that interrupt the cycle and support healing. So what does this mean for our next steps? What does it mean for your next steps? It means that we approach health less like a series of grand battles that demand instant perfection and more long game. We don't fall for the ads that said, I lose 60 pounds in 30 days because I did this habit. We choose intentional, often tiny steps, and those steps with real commitment to kindness and understanding towards yourself. The emotional landscape you inhabit and how you talk to yourself and how you treat yourself is vital as any plan for food and movement. So when you set a goal, ask yourself 2 questions. What is the smallest, even enjoyable first step I can do today? The true 2-minute version, all right? And how will I practice radical self-kindness when inevitable stumble? We all stumble, all right? And can I notice the urge to shame, choose compassion, unlearn, and reset without self-punishment? Progress is not a single dramatic finish line. There's no movement when you're suddenly completely healthy forever. That just doesn't happen. We age, things change. As I previously talked about in a previous episode, treats change. The real journey is continuous. It's compassionate practice where you're caring for yourself and one tiny self-accepting step at a time. Your future will thank you for the way you practice today. All right? So here's some quick recaps of things you could do. 1 glass of water when you wake up. 10-minute movement snack after meals, 10-minute movement after snacks and meals. 20-second mindful pause before the first bite. 3 lines of gratitude before bed. Real lines of gratitude, not just brouhaha. 1 environmental tweak that makes a helpful choice easier and a less helpful choice harder. Now, 1 2-minute starter habit that is provided you can show up, all right? You do not have to get it all right. You just have to start, okay? So thank you again for listening to Rewrite Rising. And remember to rewrite your health journey and rise above your past. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. So follow, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.